I spent my last savings to visit my family. They locked me outside in the snow. The snow had already soaked through my shoes when I realized they weren't opening the door again. I stood outside my childhood home, shivering under the freezing night sky, staring at the warm yellow lights glowing behind the curtains. I could hear laughter inside, plates clinking, my nephew giggling. And then I heard it. Click. The lock turning. My own family had locked me outside in the middle of a snowstorm. I remember standing there frozen, suitcase in one hand, phone dying in the other, wondering how my life had fallen apart so badly. 3 days earlier, I'd been sleeping in my car behind a grocery store in Chicago. I had lost my construction job months ago, burned through my savings paying rent, and eventually got evicted. I told nobody, especially not my family. To them, I was still doing fine. That's what my older brother Daniel always told everyone. Daniel was the successful one, the perfect son with the perfect job, perfect wife, and perfect life. Compared to him, I always felt like the family disappointment. But when you lose everything, home starts sounding safe again. So I spent my last savings on a bus ticket to Minnesota. 16 exhausting hours later, I finally reached my parents' house. Snow covered the rooftops, Christmas lights glowed everywhere, and for the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Maybe things would be different. Maybe family would still care. I even bought small gifts on the way there. A toy truck for my nephew, chocolates for mom, and a coffee mug for dad. When I knocked on the door, my mother opened it and froze. "Ethan," she whispered. I smiled nervously. "Hey, Mom." But instead of hugging me, she looked surprised, almost worried. "You should have called first." The words hit harder than the cold outside. Before I could answer, Daniel appeared behind her holding a glass of wine. "Well," he smirked, "look who finally showed up." Dinner that night felt like sitting with strangers. Everyone talked around me instead of to me. Daniel bragged about work, Ashley talked about private schools for their son, and Mom kept praising Daniel like he was some kind of hero. Nobody asked how I was doing. Finally, Dad looked at me. "Still working construction?" I hesitated. Daniel noticed immediately. "There it is," he said quietly. "You lost your job, didn't you?" The whole table went silent. "It's temporary," I muttered. "And where are you staying?" he asked. I didn't answer fast enough. Mom's face turned pale. "Oh my God. Ethan, are you homeless?" Hearing the word out loud felt humiliating. "It's temporary," I repeated. But Daniel leaned back in his chair and sighed. "So you came here because you need money?" "No," I snapped. "I came because I missed my family." Nobody believed me. Even worse, nobody wanted to. Later that night, Mom put me on the basement couch instead of a guest room. The basement was freezing cold, packed with old boxes and storage shelves. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to everyone upstairs laughing together while I lay alone in the dark. At around midnight, I walked upstairs quietly to get water. That's when I overheard them talking. Daniel's voice came first. "If you let him stay here," he told my parents, "don't expect us to visit anymore." "He's your brother," Mom whispered. "And he's irresponsible." Then Dad said something that broke me completely. "He always brings problems with him." I froze outside the kitchen doorway. My own father talked about me like I was some burden instead of his son. I quietly walked back downstairs before they saw me. That night, I barely slept. The next afternoon, Mom finally came downstairs with tears in her eyes. "Maybe it's best if you get a motel tonight," she said softly. I honestly thought she was joking. Outside, a snowstorm had already started. I had less than $60 left. "You want me to leave?" I asked quietly. "It's complicated." "No," I interrupted. "It's actually very simple." I packed my bag without another word. Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked me to stay. As I walked toward the front door, Daniel stood in the kitchen drinking coffee, looking relieved. That hurt more than anger ever could. Mom followed me outside and pushed $40 into my hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I looked at the money, then back at her. I didn't come here for this. Halfway down the driveway, I realized I'd forgotten my backpack inside. My wallet was in it. I turned around and walked back toward the house. That's when I saw Daniel through the front window. He looked directly at me and locked the door. Slowly, deliberately. The message was clear. "You are not welcome here anymore." Snow blasted against my face while I stood there staring at the house I grew up in. The same house where my mother used to kiss my forehead goodnight. The same house where Christmas mornings once felt magical. Now it felt colder than the storm outside. I knocked once. No answer. Again. Nothing. Then the living room lights switched off. I felt something inside me break quietly. Not anger. Not rage. Just heartbreak. I spent hours wandering through town trying to find a cheap motel, but everything was full because of a winter festival nearby. Eventually, I ended up sitting alone at a bus stop shelter, shaking violently from the cold. My phone battery died. The streets became emptier. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what loneliness felt like. Not the kind where people ignore your texts. The kind where you realize nobody is coming for you. That's when an old pickup truck slowly pulled over near the shelter. The driver rolled down his window. "You okay, son?" His name was Walter. Gray beard. Kind eyes. Heavy winter jacket. I told him a shortened version of the truth, expecting judgment. Instead, he said something I'll never forget. "Sounds like you fell down. Doesn't mean you're worthless." He bought me dinner at a small diner and even offered me temporary work at his warehouse. For the first time in months, someone looked at me like I was still human. Walter even let me sleep in the small room above his garage for a few weeks. The room wasn't fancy. The heater rattled loudly, and the mattress felt older than me. But it was warm, safe. And after everything that happened, that meant everything. I worked harder than I ever had before. Loading trucks, cleaning storage rooms, organizing deliveries. Walter noticed. One evening, he handed me an envelope with extra cash inside. "You earned it," he said. I almost cried right there. Not because of the money, because someone finally believed I was worth something. Months passed. Slowly, my life started rebuilding itself. I rented a tiny apartment, bought better clothes, and even started smiling again. Then one evening, my phone rang. "Mom." I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Hello." She was crying. "Daniel lost everything," she whispered. "His company collapsed. Ashley left him, he's struggling." I stayed silent. Funny how life works sometimes. The same brother who locked me outside in the snow was now experiencing what it felt like to lose everything. A week later, I went back home. This time Daniel opened the door. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. Wrinkled clothes. Broken confidence. For the first time in his life, he looked human. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. I didn't answer. He lowered his eyes. "That night, I was cruel. I thought success made me better than you. Then I lost everything too." For once, there was no arrogance in his voice. Just regret. During dinner, nobody bragged anymore. Nobody acted superior. The house felt quieter somehow. Smaller. Sadder. Later that night, Mom stood beside me outside while snow melted from the roof. "I failed you," she whispered. I looked at the house for a long moment before answering. "You loved whoever made life easiest." She started crying immediately because deep down, she knew it was true. Before leaving, Daniel stopped me near the front door. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said softly. "But I am sorry." I looked at him for a few seconds. Then I remembered that freezing night outside the locked door. And strangely, I no longer felt hatred, just sadness. Because sometimes people don't understand pain until life forces them to feel it themselves. As I drove away that night, I realized something important. The stranger who rescued me in the snow gave me more kindness in one evening than my own family gave me in years. And sometimes, losing everything is exactly what teaches you who truly cares when you have nothing left to offer except yourself.